And I just thought, I can't imagine a universe in which Jack Nicholson has a face that's considered trustworthy for anything, let alone the news. Hey everybody, welcome to another hard-hitting, rigorously investigated episode of Cinemaball, the film competition show that strives to be fair and balanced, while also being completely biased in its randomness. I'm Ebony Astor, and I'm joined by my primetime co-anchor and opponent, Carolyn Pettit. Hey, Carolyn.
Hey, Ebony.
This is episode 13, the fifth entry in our second round. Cinemaball is a ridiculous excuse for Carolyn and I to talk about movies. That's it. That is the whole point. If you were looking for some deeper meaning, you will not find it. Our picks are random, and so are my opinions. In this round, Carol is playing some pretty unassailable defense, trying to prevent me from reaching my goal film, The Legend of Billie Jean. At the end of last week's episode, Carolyn hitched her pony to the always dynamic performances of Holly Hunter and ran through the control room clutching a copy of Broadcast News. It's one of her favorite films and one I had never seen before because I am a simple, uncultured soul, not unlike Tom Grunick. At the end of our discussion, I may just blow Carol's mind with an old favorite of my own. So stay tuned to find out what garbage sock I'm going to toss on the heap. We'll get into Broadcast News shortly, but first, it's time for a new segment we call Cinemaball Update. Carolyn, take it away.
Thanks, Ebony. Cinemaball Update is a new segment where we bring you the latest news about movies we've already discussed on Cinemaball. Now, you might think there wouldn't be breaking news about most of the movies we talk about on this show, and you'd generally be right. But this past week proved to be an exception. Ebony, you and I recently talked about Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Sorry, just getting through that title.
Yeah, and so, here's an interesting tidbit about that film that has recently emerged. This emerged as Winona and Keanu, who play a wedded couple that is not destined to be. They are not the star-crossed lovers fated for each other, but they are nonetheless married in the course of Bram Stoker's Dracula. While doing promotion for their new upcoming romantic comedy together, Winona Ryder sort of lets slip that she thinks that she and Keanu might sorta kinda actually be married. And here's the reasoning and thinking behind this. After the initial filming on Dracula concluded, Coppola was not happy with the stylized wedding scene that he had originally filmed. And so he reshot that scene for the movie at an Orthodox church, at a Greek Orthodox church in Los Angeles with an actual priest. And so they actually essentially performed like a real wedding ceremony, and so
great.
And so Winona said about this, like, we actually got married in Dracula. No, I swear to God, I think we're married in real life. In that scene, Francis used a real Romanian priest. We shot the master and he did the whole thing, so I think we're married. Now, so just a wonderful...
I absolutely love this.
Yeah, it's such a great
it's ludicrous,
story.
Right? But I love the idea that they have just been married this whole time. I mean, my mind was blown today by the news that Daryl Hannah and Neil Young apparently quietly got married, and they did that shit on purpose. But I love the idea that Winona and Keanu, I don't know, there's something so ineffably like alien about the two of them. Have just been, just paragon of domestic bliss since 93 or whenever Dracula came out.
So this is actually the upcoming film is going to be their fourth film together. They were both in Dracula. They were both in A Scanner Darkly.
Yeah.
They were in a third film, the name of which is escaping me now, that I don't think I'd ever even heard of before. And this film, and this is the first time that they're actually going to be playing like kind of lovers or, a romantic pairing that's actually supposed to have, like, sparks, as opposed to Dracula, where I think Jonathan Harker, Keanu's character, is supposed to be kind of a wet noodle.
Right.
So, I'm really looking forward to seeing it if that works, right? Seeing if these two give off actual chemistry.
Keanu, we've talked about this both on Cinemaball, but then also on the mothership, Feminist Frequency Radio. But there's something about Keanu's kind of affect now that he's gotten older. And I'm not the only one who thinks this, by the way, America. People have taken me to task for only getting interested in people, certain actors, once they get older. Tom Cruise, for instance. But there is definitely something about Keanu, the older Keanu. There's like, I don't know, a certain depth to him and a certain like freedom to, I don't know, like there's something about him that kind of crackles with energy now in a way that he seemed much more laid back as a youth. Winona, happy, let me know where y'all are registered. Happy to contribute.
Yeah. Join us on next week's Cinemaball update when we'll bring you all the latest on Hard Target.
I would love it if you had some Hard Target updates.
We'll see.
And I would especially love it if you didn't have to dig deep for them, but just like something between now and next week happened.
Yeah,
and you were like,
exactly. Here's the news.
I got some rattlesnake punching news. Gotta let the people know.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. So, Carol, now that we've had our Cinemaball update, tell us a little bit about Broadcast News.
Absolutely. So Broadcast News is a 1987 romantic comedy drama written and directed by James L. Brooks. And it's largely set in the newsroom of the Washington Bureau of a fictional TV network. One thing you definitely have to remember when watching this film, or keep in mind as we discuss it, is that this is a time, in the late 80s, or, before the cable news onslaught, before the 24-hour news cycle, when people, like, across America really, sat down with Tom Brokaw or Dan Rather or maybe
Peter Jennings.
Peter Jennings, and got their news. And so James L. Brooks, so this is a film that reflects a bygone era in a sense. And in researching and preparing for it, Brooks spent a lot of time interviewing and collaborating with a woman named Susan Zirinsky, who herself started at the Washington, D.C. Bureau of CBS News when she was 20, and has been sort of, had like, in a sense, a kind of meteoric rise within the ranks, and has now been, I believe, the executive producer of CBS's news magazine show 48 Hours for, some 20 plus years. And so it was really from her that Brooks got a lot of the details that I think inform this story, and certainly that shaped the character of Jane Craig, who is played by Holly Hunter in her, like, 1-2 punch of 1987 performances, this and Raising Arizona, that I think really sort of established her as a sort of remarkable actor. I don't think she's ever been a star, like, in the box office sense, but she's certainly been, like, a very respected, acting talent.
Yeah.
And I think it was that year that really put her on the map in that sense. Yeah, and so of course the general plot of the film concerns a love triangle between Jane Craig, played by Holly Hunter. The role was originally supposed to be played by Deborah Winger, but she was pregnant. She got pregnant, and so she, I think, stepped out of the role, allowing Holly Hunter to step in. And now it's really impossible for me to imagine anyone but Holly Hunter in that role. She gets embroiled in a kind of love triangle that brings up all kinds of moral and ethical issues because, she is adored by her colleague Aaron Altman, played by Albert Brooks, and, the two of them are very much of the same mind when it comes to holding television news to a certain ethical standard.
Mm-hmm.
But she finds herself romantically drawn to newcomer to their bureau, Tom Grunick, played by William Hurt, who is, as the critic Carrie Rickey puts it in the essay she wrote to accompany this film in the Criterion Collection release. Tom Grunick is essentially the dumb blonde of the film, right? He's a pretty face. He's exactly what the network wants, in terms of looks, but he doesn't have the ethical substance or really even the knowledge of the knowledge that one expects, or that certainly that Jane and Aaron expect a news anchor to have. He's just not that bright when it comes to understanding the political realities of the world and things like that. And so for me, there's really two fascinating axes on which this film can be discussed, and they intersect in the film, but they also illuminate kind of things on their own. One is the standards that we do hold sort of broadcast, or I would say today, also print and internet journalism to. This film captures a moment like before a sort of tremendous kind of maybe down precarious kind of slip down a cliff of standards in that area. But it also, I think, forces us to think about the intersection between personal and professional ethics and our personal lives, right? As these people have to figure out, as Jane has to figure out, like, can she love Tom while kind of knowing that he doesn't share her ethical sensibilities, right? And which has always been a fascinating topic for me personally. And, I think about how in recent years, there was a talk that Bell Hooks had with Laverne Cox at the New School in New York a few years ago. And one fascinating element of that conversation is Bell Hooks sort of talking about how, she's this single, older woman, and she's looking for partnership in her life. And she sort of admits to herself, that maybe it's possible for her to find a connection, a real deep, meaningful connection with a man who does not share her like political ethos. And there's, also like a great moment in the film, The Punk Singer, about, is it Kathleen Hanna?
Yeah.
I think it's Kathleen Hanna, where she talks about, falling in love with one of the Beastie Boys, and like how she was this feminist, very like committed feminist artist. And she was hanging out with, one of the guys who wrote the song Girls, 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 with lyrics like girls to do the laundry, girls to clean up my room, this extremely misogynistic song. And yet she couldn't, like she said, but there's no way I was not going to hang out with him because of the connection they had. And it's just that complex space where, how important are our professional ethics in our personal relationships, right? So anyway, there's just so much insightful and fascinating stuff in this film. And in my mind, it's all dealt with in a way that is so sparkling and witty and smart and insightful that, it also, it really works as just this involving workplace romantic drama, but it also has like all these layers to it.
Speaking of the ending where Jane recognizes the kind of ethical misstep that Tom has made and then goes to confront him at the airport, I was so glad that in another movie, I won't say a lesser movie, but I'm thinking it, but in another movie, she absolutely would have forgiven him
Yes.
And she would have the way that the film would have sort of danced around that ethical breach and his, their sort of misalignment in terms of ethics and integrity, is that we would have been given to understand that through her influence, he would grow and become better and recognize that he had made a mistake. And so she would have been the vehicle for his emotional growth. The fact that we didn't get that in this movie made me so happy. There was never a question, or at least we don't see her questioning, whether she's going to go to the airport, not in any real way. It is inconceivable to her that someone could do this. She holds what she does, her job, she considers it so vital, so sacred, that what Tom has done, perhaps to an outsider, might not look that bad, particularly in this this sort of hyper manipulated media landscape we live in now. There might be a moment of thinking like, is it that bad?
Absolutely.
He did feel bad in the interview, so who cares if he,
Right.
kind of faked crying in that moment. He was going to cry, right? And this is what Tom himself says. But there is something, qualitatively different, and Jane knows that. And so the fact that she didn't sort of surrender to the kind of fantasy of being with Tom, the kind of like, devil may care, just fly off to the tropics with all of your clothes on you and don't even bring a suitcase. The fact that she doesn't was amazing to me. And so wonderful. And it did feel so authentic, because had she made a different decision, it would have felt false to me and dishonest to who she was.
Right, I agree. And so, as you say, like, today, newsrooms might not react that way. And in fact, so there's a commentary track on the Criterion release of this film in which James L. Brooks says there isn't a newsroom today, operating in which Jane Craig's standards would fly. Like, he believes that era just doesn't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
However, interestingly, and I don't know, I think this may have been the result of like initial focus testing or something, but interestingly, sometime after the original shooting had wrapped, and they'd put together like the initial cut, they actually did film an alternate ending, or that was maybe going to be the actual ending, in which after Jane gets in the cab at the airport, right after having her little confrontation with Tom and saying like, I'm not going with you, in which Tom himself does not get on the plane, but instead like gets in the cab with her, as right before she's about to drive away, and continues like pleading with her to like, to like forgive him and be with him. Thankfully. Yeah, I mean, which shows like some commitment, I guess. Yeah, no, I mean, thankfully that's not what happened. But there's also a part of me that feels like, for all the ways in which, we can say that the media has changed since the release of this film, there are also ways in which it still feels very perceptive and apt. Like there's a line in this film that is so key to me. Where, so Jane and Aaron are, they're reporting, they're like, embedded with these like Sandinistas, and, some shooting breaks out, and Aaron records like a off-the-cuff, spur-of-the-moment, like special report, to send back to, to be broadcast. And as soon as they cut, Aaron says, "I can't believe I just risked my life for a network that tests my face with focus groups."
Yeah.
And, and that, like, so, like, obviously, I'm not to say that there's any comparison between video game journalism and, like, actual geopolitical journalism of the sort that Jane and Aaron and Tom are involved with in this film. And yet, like, certainly, like, at my previous job, like they did run like focus groups and focus tests and things like that. And the idea that my whatever I had to offer journalistically or from, might be kind of sidelined, or that I might be let go or whatever because, I didn't test well with audiences. Like that was, a legitimate, like that left a nasty taste in my mouth, right? Just the thought of that. Yeah. And so like there's that inextricable link between in broadcast or even, video, journalism, between like appearance and substance or you cannot, like viewers are looking at the anchors, right? And on some level that is making, some kind of impression on them, positive or negative, and the people who make decisions about who reads us the news, do a lot of thinking about what does this person look like, right? Jane Craig, Holly Hunter's character, is sort of subject to this too. We see her early on. She's giving a talk at an event for newscasters, right? And her whole agenda at the talk is a crusade against the increasing infotainmentizing of the news, right? She shows a clip of like dominoes being knocked over, and says like, this is what all these networks aired on the night that they should have been talking about the SALT to nuclear disarmament talks, and the audience bursts into applause. They love it, and she's she's like saying, no, like, what? You should be wanting to provide substance and like the news of the day to your viewers. But there's a woman in the crowd who's sitting with Tom at the time, and she says to Tom something like, oh, it's so sad. I see this all the time. A woman doesn't like her looks, and so she's angry. Right. And like, I think Holly Hunter is beautiful in this film, but it's also true that she doesn't have maybe the kind of blonde, statuesque white woman beauty that would make her a top candidate for like an anchor or co-anchor position. And there's also been like that aspect, to my involvement in media too, of like, well, when I call out these standards or like when I call out how, so much is based on appearance, do people think I'm just doing that because there are ways in which I can't succeed, in that system, and am I doing this because there are ways in which I just can't succeed in that system, right? It's all this stuff is just so complicated, and I think this film does such a great job of cutting to the heart of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I had to laugh though when you mentioned the when Aaron says, I can't believe I'm doing this for a network that, tests my face with focus groups, because I immediately thought like, what focus group would have approved Jack Nicholson's face? So Jack Nicholson plays the primetime anchor, the big shot in this film. And I just thought, I can't imagine a universe in which Jack Nicholson has a face that's considered trustworthy for anything, let alone the news. That's just a meta commentary. But yeah, I think certainly, let's peel back the curtain a bit here on Feminist Frequency, rather than Cinemaball specifically. This latest season of The Freak Show, and so this is something that I've started doing with the team, and it's been fantastic. But as a writer and as a academic, I was completely unprepared, not intellectually, but sort of, emotionally, for the way that you are graded visually incessantly, even by people who claim, who deeply believe that they are somehow on your side, or that they are sympathetic to what you are saying. It seems to be almost impossible for folks not to advance an opinion, a sort of checklist of things you should be doing appearance-wise to get your message across. And it's always couched in, if they think they're sympathetic, I'm just saying this to help you. I think you should know this. And if they're not on your side, it's, fuck you. and then, the slurs follow, and whatever. But yeah, just, when you talked at the top of the show about, or the top of the discussion about how we no longer sit down and watch the evening news anymore, which is not to say that we're not still getting the news. We're just getting it in different ways. But the
right, we're if anything, we're more exposed now than we were then, right? A lot of us were getting news fed to us constantly on the 24-hour news cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. But except for certain cable news personalities, the kind of visual component that used to be there, the standard primetime anchor model, like the Tom Brokaw, the Peter Jennings, the Dan Rathers, that sort of excuse me, there was a very similar mold there, right? Like this white, middle-aged, upper middle class, educated kind of persona, right? That was affected. That's less in play now. In our news. And so it was really interesting for me to go back and watch, or I should say watch this for the first time, because I had never seen this film before. And just let me walk you through my reaction to this movie, because this movie made me profoundly anxious.
Okay.
And I need to watch it again and really kind of reckon with what made me anxious, but I can identify two things off the top of my head. Two, the pressure that Holly Hunter was under as the producer made me sick to my stomach. I couldn't handle being in that kind of work environment when they're up against the clock trying to find the exact turn of phrase or the exact piece of footage that they need, to craft a story. For whatever reason, I almost had to stop it. I can't handle that kind of high pressure workplace drama. So, yeah. and in the way that she did it so gracefully and without breaking a sweat, you just knew she was in her element. There was never a question that she knew what was right, what would be best, what would play well. And she never questioned herself. It was magnificent to watch. She's still, a fairly young woman at this time. She's in a control room in an industry that is predominantly then and now male dominated, and yet she never shrinks herself. She never hesitates to advocate for what she wants and to demand it. And it was thrilling to watch. While at the same time, I was thinking, if this was my job, I would not last a day. I wouldn't last before lunch. Seriously, I would not have been able to take it. The second thing that brought me anxiety about this movie, and I should make it clear, I'm not saying I didn't like the movie, I'm just talking about the anxiety.
No, that's of course, that's fine.
Because there's no way that I could not enjoy a film that starts with Albert Brooks as a young man being tormented after graduation and then cursing his attackers with, "You will never know the pleasure of writing a graceful sentence."
Yeah.
I just thought, I'm all in. But speaking of Aaron Altman, he made me so uncomfortable because while I do think that the film does not let him off the hook, but
oh yeah, he's such an asshole.
He is, and the way he goes about doing the kind of nice guy shuffle around Jane, playing upon the fact that they do have this very deep and intimate workplace and friend connection. They are very similar. As you said earlier, they share the kind of same high standards, and they laugh at the same kind of jokes, and they care so deeply about each other. But the fact that Aaron, seems to have real trouble, and in fact does have real trouble dealing with the fact that he is not the object of Jane's sexual attraction, and in fact lashes out at her aggressively when she says that she is, I just found it so horrifying to watch, probably because
Yeah.
I have been conditioned by so much media to expect that that is the guy who usually ends up getting the girl, even though he behaves in such an abominable way. And so thank God that did not happen. But there was a part of me that was holding my breath because I was so afraid that at the end of the movie there would be some sort of rapprochement, and that, you know, she wouldn't end up with Tom, but she would end up with Aaron, and it would turn out that, you know, we would be encouraged to see his behavior as the, you know, sort of bad behavior of someone who is just deeply romantic or just very passionate. But the movie does not let him off the hook, thank goodness.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those films where the portrayals of the characters are so complex that, like, for me, there's no ambiguity about, like, depiction equaling endorsement. Like, it's not saying... It's not, as you say, it's not letting Aaron off the hook. Like, it's not, and I think that it's, that the way he behaves, you know, I think the scene in which he and Jane have their big confrontation, it just all rings so true. It rings so true to me, that kind of intellectual sparring that goes on, because Aaron starts talking about how what he says is, Tom is the devil. And what he says, you know, the devil, if he comes along, isn't going to be somebody who, like, is actually outwardly evil. You know, he'll be nice. He'll never hurt a living thing. He'll just lower our standards where it matters, you know, a little bit. And to me, like my whole thing with Aaron in this movie is, like, I'm always like, dude, you are not wrong. Like, you are 100% right. You're being a complete asshole about the way that you say it and communicate it, but you are absolutely right. Like, and that's part of what makes this movie so deliciously complex to me, is Aaron gets way too much pleasure out of being smarter than Tom, right?
Yes.
There's a scene where he asks Tom, like, okay, you know, do you know the names of the members of cabinet?
Yeah.
And, you know, and Tom's like, I'm not going to get into this with you. I'm not going to play your little games. And he's like, no, you don't have to name them. I just, you know, let's say I blanked on their names. And I was like, hey, gosh, Tom, I blanked on the cabinet's names. Would you be able to, you know, would you know them? Would you be able to help me? And Tom's like, yes, Aaron, I know the names of the cabinet. And he's like, all 12? Tom's like, yes, Aaron, all 12. And he's like, there's only 10. And, you know, you just see how much pleasure he takes in showing Tom that he knows that Tom doesn't really know anything. And it's so fucked up.
Yeah, I from the beginning of the film, where we see Aaron and Tom as children, you know, so we see Aaron graduating from high school early. I think he's like 15 or 16, you know, giving that very triumphant sort of like, you know, you couldn't beat me down, you couldn't keep me down. Ultimately, I'm the bigger person, and I'm really going to make something of myself. And you see a much younger Tom, you know, kind of ashamedly admitting to his dad that his grades are not good, and just like sincerely expressing a desire that he can get better and that he will do better. He will do better. He will try harder. So there's a through line from those two moments, so that when we see Aaron, you know, performing that kind of like masculine jockeying and taking pleasure out of humiliating Tom in that moment, it's very much of a piece with what he was trying to do when he was younger, right? Like recognizing that there's a certain amount of social capital and a certain kind of social status he will never possess. But what he does have is, you know, just an amazing brain, and he will use that to, you know, kind of play the same power games, unfortunately, that the men he despises does.
Yeah. There's another scene I want to talk about too, that's crucial in the film, and that is the scene where, this news story breaks, like a Libyan fighter jet attacks like an American military base or something, and they have to scramble to do, you know, like a special report, and Tom is pegged to anchor, to anchor the report. not Aaron, right? And Aaron is in fact told to go home, and Holly Hunter, like Jane, uh, uh, sort of Jane campaigns for Aaron to get that position, right? But the head of the news division just doesn't listen to her and goes with Tom, and so Jane is in this position where she has to like feed lines to Tom and feed information to Tom, and this is basically like the big sex scene in the film, right? It's not, obviously it's not literally a sex scene, but like as Jane is sort of, quote unquote in Tom's head, and she's like feeding him the information, and like you see her fingers kind of brushing over the buttons up in the control room at times playfully, and it just like it does the scene just does such a fantastic job of giving you a sense of like that chemistry that the two of these people are finding with each other in that process and in that moment of them working together in this intimate way. And that, that's where, I think the real shift for Jane starts to happen, where despite all of her like reservations about Tom's sort of lack of credentials, his lack of, knowledge, that she starts to really, really feel attracted to him. And I just think that scene is so masterful at the way that it does that.
Yeah, excuse me. I think the film is so smart about creating in Tom a character that you feel you don't question the attraction that Jane has for him. He's not simply, an empty suit. He's not simply a pretty face. He absolutely is not as smart as, as educated, as, insightful as Aaron is, but he's not a nobody. He's not a nothing. His skills, such as they are not empty skills. And so, when Tom decides to do a story, like his first story on his own, that's about, date rape and sexual assault, and gets all this pushback from it, primarily from the male members of staff, but then draws these, like this emotional reaction from many of the women on staff, it's one of the moments where we see that, no, there is something there. He absolutely is not at Jane's level. He's not at Aaron's level. And it's debatable whether he ever could be at their level, no matter how hard he tried and how hard he'd studied. But nevertheless, he's not completely unworthy of Jane's attention. And in fact, I wondered throughout the film where it was going to go, because as I said, I've been conditioned by so much media to assume that like the kind of underdog friend zoned guy was going to be the one that ultimately gets chosen, who gets rewarded for essentially putting friendship tokens in the lady robot. But there was also a way in which I could see Tom being the final choice, just because that attraction was so honestly and sort of intensely conveyed. Like, he was so simple and sincere, and until the end, and we know what he has done, seemed so honest. You can see the attraction of somebody like that for
Absolutely.
For Jane.
And so the film ends with this 7-year jump into the future, where we sort of rejoin the three, long after this kind of love triangle between them has ended, and they each kind of have their own personal lives now. Aaron is married, Tom has a fiance, Jane is seeing some guy who's, works at the Surgeon General's office and who's getting her into water skiing or something. And as Tom is Tom is about to get promoted to, the lead anchor role, like the position that Jack Nicholson has held throughout the film. They offered him the position, and he replied that, he's honored or happy, thrilled to take the anchor position, but he doesn't want to be the managing editor. And for Tom, like, that's an ethical statement, because he knows he doesn't have the right. he knows he's not the right person to do that, right? He knows he
Right.
doesn't have the skill to do that. And so there is in Tom throughout the film, I think from that like that childhood vision at the very beginning to this moment at the end, there is like a always an attempt on his part to do what is best within his own limitations
Yeah.
to some degree, so and that maybe there's something admirable in that.
Yeah, it was hard for me, although I absolutely understood, excuse me, Jane's reason for not going with Tom, and I understood that the importance of her sticking by her principles. Weirdly, well, maybe not so weirdly, I was left with so much more kind of warm feeling for Tom than I was for Aaron. There was something, just an edge of bitterness that I don't know if it was actually there, if I was just imagining it and, projecting. I don't know. But there just still seemed to be a hint, maybe more than a hint, of bitterness in Aaron that was distasteful to me in a way that, like, I didn't feel as if he experienced really any growth.
That's really yeah. I do see that. I mean, so I definitely like. It's interesting that you say this about Tom because, like, I mean, there are aspects of all three of these central characters that I relate to. Like, I see myself to some degree in all of them, and that's part of what makes my relationship with this film so so pleasurable in a lot of ways. But certainly, like I have to admit, I have a lot of sympathy for Aaron, because, I definitely know what it is to be the person who has the unrequited love. And, even for someone that, you consider a close friend. And I guess I feel like, he's so kind of cruel to her in that in the final scene that they the final moment that Jane and Aaron spend together before kind of parting ways after the mass layoffs and everyone's kind of doing their own thing and going their separate ways, but it's like, and again, I feel like the film is not endorsing his behavior. I feel like it's shitty behavior. It really is, but it comes from a place like he just can't be vulnerable around Jane right then because he's so wounded by the fact that they aren't going to be together. And then so we jump forward and yeah, he's the part of Aaron. You're right that Aaron has never moved past the part of him that just takes pleasure in being smarter than other people, because we see him even getting his child to make fun of Tom, right? He now has this young son, and they make fun of Tom. But I at the same time, like, I love that the film ends with Jane and Aaron, on this bench together, talking about their lives now. He's talking about his wife getting a new job and how his work is going, and asks from a genuine place of interest, not a place of like jealousy anymore or guardedness, but asks like, oh, who's this guy you're seeing? Like, how's that going?
Yeah.
I just love that it ends that like that what endures, is the friendship between the two of them ultimately. Like, that just makes me so happy.
Yeah, I loved it, and I this is why I say I need to go back and watch the film again, because there's so much that I need to really think about, some more, and the ending is part of that tag. Excuse me, because there's a part of me that is glad that Holly Hunter, that the James L. Brooks did not choose to leave her kind of dangling at the end. Not that women need a partner,
right?
Not that we need like heterosexual validation, but I did want the suggestion that, yes, okay, being in a relationship is important to her, but her job is always going to be more important to her. I don't think there's a question that that's the case, and that she's unafraid to be ambitious and to be smart and to move forward and to take on new challenges, but also unafraid to be like, no, to be the same woman that would, cheekily slip condoms into her purse before the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't wait to watch this film again. And don't get me wrong, like when I say that I had warmer feelings for Tom over Aaron at the end, I'm absolutely the kind of idiot who would, be in the focus group and be like, I like this anchor over this anchor. Like, I'm just as susceptible to like the pretty face as other, not that there's anything wrong with Albert Brooks, right? But, like how much of that is me not truly understanding how much like appearance goes into the, my personal approval ratings. Who knows? All I know is Tom seemed like 2 degrees away from just a good old hayseed farm boy. And I was like, you made a mistake. You need to learn from it, but I'm gonna let you cook.
Yeah.
Oh boy, so good. I'm so glad you chose this film because I had never seen it, and like Night on Earth, which I had confused with another movie, in my head I knew what broadcast news was, but it was like the middle had somehow been replaced with network. So I can't even explain. Carolyn, how am I allowed to co-host this show with you?
Well,
I am the Tom Grunick of this show.
But it's interesting you say that because like whenever I mention this film as, for me, like the definitive film about news and ethics, people are always like, well, network though. And it's like, yeah, I mean, network is, whatever. Network is fine. I mean, network, but, and I think network holds that position in the cultural consciousness of being like the film about like television and news, ethics and those kinds of things. And I think that maybe this film, maybe it can't hold that place of prestige because it's kind of a romance, because but to me, like, this film is so smart and so perceptive, while also being just remarkably entertaining and joyful, anyway, I love this movie.
So full of heart, and yet so witty and smart. Oh, yeah. Very much enjoyed it. Very much enjoyed it. Okay, Carol, let us wrap up our discussion of broadcast news with a segment we like to bring to the people called Sommovier. This is where we pair the film we've just seen with another film we think you'd enjoy. Carol, what you got?
Well, I have a little film that's, also very much, I think, it's very much about a woman working in news and, kind of confronting ways in which news is becoming more and more about entertainment and less about substance, and who in her own way is crusading to bring substance to the news. That's a film called The China Syndrome. We discussed the China Syndrome on an earlier episode of Cinemaball, and I just think that that these two films, in the way that they both center, in different ways, women who are working in news. Jane Fonda's character in The China Syndrome is constantly kind of belittled and forced to do these kinds of human interest stories, these really goofy human interest stories, which are exactly the kind of thing that Jane Craig, Holly Hunter's character in this film, is crusading against. And so, I just think those two films would make a fascinating double feature. What about you?
I love it. Okay, so excuse me. This selection will tell you all about my gooey chocolate center. So I am pairing this movie not with anything that speaks to the nature of news or politics or women in the workplace, but a film about smart guy and a dumb guy liking the same girl.
Oh.
I'm talking about Roxanne.
Oh,
Steve
yeah.
Martin's modern telling of the Cyrano de Bergerac story.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm choosing it is because, again, I have, I don't want to say inexplicable, but probably slightly outsized warmth for the character of Tom Grunick. In the same way that I have very warm feelings for the character of Chris, Christian in the original. But one of the things that I love about the movie Roxanne is that Chris is very aware that he's not a mental match for Roxanne. He, is very aware that, the attraction that the two of them have is primarily physical. And we shouldn't, dismiss the importance of like that kind of physical animalistic attraction you can have with people. It's valid, but he's aware he's not her mental match, but nevertheless he doesn't dismiss what he does have. He's gonna run off to Vegas and be a blackjack dealer, and I don't know, there's just something about the way the movie allows him some measure of dignity, and recognizing that no, I'm not an astrophysicist, and I'm not someone who can verbally duel with 20 guys in a bar and cut them all down to size. But I am a warm-hearted, good, honest man, and what I have is enough. And you and I will not be together, but that doesn't mean that I'm not worthwhile for someone else. Now, we absolutely should talk about the way the film, how the character CB, played by Steve Martin, is allowed to be enraptured with the beauty of Roxanne in a way that she is sort of not allowed to be enraptured with someone else's physical beauty. But that's a larger conversation about the expectations we place upon men and women. So I'm choosing Roxanne as my Sommovier selection for the week.
There you go.
Yep. All right. Now, Carol, it's time for us to render our verdicts on broadcast news using my messed up little brother's patented 100-star scale. As highly respected cinema ambassadors, our mission is to spread the word of this incredibly accurate film rating system, and it's taking off around the globe thanks to you, our Cinemaball listeners. You can find our full list of our episode and rating history in the document linked in the podcast description. All right, Carol, how do you rate broadcast news?
Well, I really think this film is almost in a class by itself. I think that it represents a kind of witty, sparkly, kind of sharp-witted comedy that to me is so reminiscent of the kind of, like screwball comedies of the 30s and 40s. There's like a sharpness to the dialogue that recalls for me films like His Girl Friday. And I think that it's as I've said throughout the show, I think that it's so perceptive about human. I don't want to say human nature, but about attraction and personality and ethics, and how these things collide, and how that does or doesn't impact like the people that we are drawn to, the people that we surround ourselves with, the people we want to be with or don't want to be with. I think that everything it has to say about the standards of journalism is at least as vital today as it was when this film was released in 1987. This film is truly a rare personal favorite for me. It's on the very short list of Carolyn's all-time favorites, and so I am bestowing upon it the rare honor. Get James L. Brooks on the phone. Broadcast News is Cinemaball's first 100-star movie.
Wow. I can find no words but this surely is going to go in the pantheon. When,
Yeah.
in a few years' time, producers clamor to put together like clip shows of the best bits from Cinemaball.
Yeah.
Our first and probably only 100
Right.
point
Yeah.
selection definitely
it may
is gonna
well
lead
end
the
up.
list. That's awesome. I love it. I was glad I was here to witness it.
Yeah. You just witnessed history, Ebony. You just witnessed history.
I know, especially I know how tough it is for a movie to even crack 80.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for something to get 100, that's awesome. But this is so hard because, as I said, I need to go back and watch this. This is a film that completely knocked me on my ass in a way that I was not prepared for. I expected something much less substantial. I loved the space that the director gave to the dialogue in this film. So a film like this that is so smart, so sharp, can often feel very writerly. And so,
Right.
Sometimes you can feel as if the actors, it just feels very performative. It doesn't feel particularly authentic, which is, sometimes that can have its own appeal. Like sometimes, like the Coen brothers, for instance, sometimes their films feel very writerly.
Sorkin in particular,
Absolutely.
is a writer that comes to mind when people, like I enjoy a good Sorkin walk and talk as much as anybody. Boy, I will eat that stuff up. But yeah, there's definitely, or David Mamet,
Right.
there's a writerly, you're aware of the hand of the writer.
Exactly. And so I, excuse me, I appreciated the just the way that the director sort of let characters sit in a moment and experience things and allow us to let things sink in, words and phrases and emotions. I really appreciated that, and it, if anything, made it that much more substantial for me. So loved that. Excuse me. I loved how complex the characters were. It would have been so easy for Tom Grunick to have become a kind of very cartoonish villain in this film, and that never happened. It would have been very easy for Holly Hunter's character to be a kind of, shrewish caricature, and that never happened. Even, Aaron Altman, who, made me very uncomfortable in certain scenes, it would have been very easy for him to lapse completely into kind of like Weasley worm territory, and that never happened. There is a nobility and a grace and a dignity and heart to all of these characters, and I absolutely loved it. So I am giving the film a 93.
All right. Yeah, I to your point about the sort of room it gives its characters in the dialogue, one of my favorite it's almost a throwaway moment, but it's still one of my favorites in the film is after Aaron has been kind of sent home for the day when everyone else is preparing to do the big Libyan, special report. We see him at home, and he's just like, he's trying to like occupy himself when of course his whole mind is of course like actually on like what's happening at the station, what's happening with the report, and he's like reading a book and he's listening to music at the same time, and he's like, he's like sings to himself like, I can read while I sing. I am singing and reading both, and it's just it's such a great little moment.
Oh, so good.
All right, Ebony, before we sign off on another broadcast with a cheery good night and good luck, it's time for you to tell us where the USS Cinemaball is headed next.
Carolyn, Marie, Josephine,
Uh-oh.
Ethel, Dorothea Pettit.
Uh-oh.
I am, oh boy, this one was hard for me.
Okay.
Because there are so many places to go after this.
I know.
Even if you just took the three top billed people in this movie, William Hurt, Albert Brooks, and Holly Hunter, there's almost nowhere under the sun, and no genre you won't touch.
Yes.
And then when you get into supporting cast, Robert Prosky, Joan Cusack, Jack Nicholson. Okay?
I know, Jack Nicholson, yeah.
So I knew from the beginning, I could throw you some amazing curveballs from this film, or I could do the grown-up thing and actually choose something that we would want to both watch again.
Where's the fun in that?
Exactly, right? So,
Oh, God.
although we don't allow ourselves the cheat of using those sites where you can connect two movies to another, I wanted to kind of keep you on your toes, right? So I decided I wasn't going to go for something that either one of us, I suspected, had seen before. So
right.
I wanted to get deeper into IMDb.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
once you get past like the first couple of people, and then maybe the next 10 people, and then you're getting into people who may not even be, they may be, credited, but their character may not even have a name. I'm like, let me explore something about these people. But that wasn't enough either.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
I was working. I put in the work.
Yeah.
I checked producers. I checked editors. I checked the director of photography. Where would I go?
Oh.
Where would I take us next? And then I heard it. A voice said to me, check the casting department.
Okay.
And I looked.
Yeah.
And there's a person in the casting department for Broadcast News named Paula Harold, who only 2 years before had worked on The Legend of Billie Jean. That's right. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I have done it. I have shot the Cinemaball into the basket. I have carried it across the goal line. I have shot it into the goal.
Yes.
Cinemaball.
Wow, Ebony, all your hard work paid off. You are bringing it home. You are bringing it home.
This is so stupid. But listen, folks, when I figured this out, I immediately contacted Anita and I was like, I have to tell someone, but you can't tell Carol, but I'm about to win Cinemaball. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
So
that's very exciting. I mean, I'm thrilled. This is not just your first, goal, but the first proper goal, in Cinemaball. So that's very, very exciting.
I honestly didn't know if we were going to be able to do it because I think we've both been playing, a very interesting game. And it would have been
I have to admit
in the realm of possibility for us to never get there. But sometimes you dig in, you take a deep breath and it happens for you.
Clearly, as the defender, I did not do my due diligence and check the casting department, and just ensure that literally nobody involved with this film had been involved with that film. So, serves me right for not, for laying down on the job.
You took your eye off the Cinemaball, and I took my shot.
Yep.
So
Yep.
Next week, we are going to finally discuss the 1985 feature-length music video, The Legend of Billie Jean, a film that probably inappropriately has a lot to do with the teenage rebellion I subsequently engaged in. Anyways, that is going to do it for us this week, folks. Thanks so much to Simplecast, which hosts both this podcast and our flagship show, Feminist Frequency Radio. Thanks also to our amazing producer, Sarah Norales. And hey, thank you for listening. If you like the show, take a second and leave a review on iTunes or wherever you subscribe to your podcast. It is super incredibly helpful in boosting our ratings and helping other folks find our show. We will see you back here soon for another episode of Cinemaball.
Until then, the balcony is closed.
Oh, God.
Hey, Cinemaballers! If you've been enjoying this weekly dose of movie mania with me and Ebony, you should check out our big sister podcast, Feminist Frequency Radio. Every Wednesday, join Anita, Ebony, and me as we unleash our irreverent and only occasionally educational feminist opinions on the hot pop culture news of the day and the media we think you should be paying attention to. You can find Feminist Frequency Radio wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And hey, if you like what you hear, sign up at d.rip/femfreak to get early access to each episode, hilarious bonus content, and exclusive backer rewards. Tune in and find out what everyone is freaking out about.